I'm Allison Ebner, Head of Member Relations here at the Employers Association, and we welcome you to what is a super hot topic right now. Kind of exciting for us to be bringing you something non-compliance related, right, in a BYOL webinar from us here, and really happy to have Kevin as our guest today. So I'm going to turn the program over to Pam Thornton, our Director of Strategic HR Services here at EANE.
Thank you so much, Allison. We are so thrilled to have Kevin joining us today. We know he's got lots of information to share about his briefing from the state, and we've had, quite a few questions. So we're really hoping to not only share the information with you, but then also come up with some great ideas about how we can use this amazing opportunity that we've been giving. So I'm going to turn it over to Kevin. You want to share your slides, Kevin?
Yeah, thanks, Pam. Thanks, Allison. Hello, everybody. Great to be with you. Let's get the screen in position here, and then we'll kind of rock and roll.
Kevin, does everybody know you? I think we should really tell them who you are.
Well, if you haven't seen me in my picture in the post office, I'll introduce myself. I'm Kevin Lynn. I'm the Executive Director of MassHire Springfield Career Center here at Springfield. We are one of the state's 30 or so career centers. We work with both businesses and job seekers in terms of matching talent up with demand, which is, you're the demand side. So it's good to be here.
Thank you so much.
So I'm going to start with just a kind of a broad overview of what we're going to cover today. So this is the HireNow program, and if we're going to talk about it in three kind of different kind of buckets, I'll say. I'm going to cover a little bit about what the program is, some of the thought behind the project here, the grant. It's really a grant. And then what do you have to do to execute the grant? And then finally, what's the timeline, the deliverables that you need to know in order to get the money? This is all about the money. You want the money. So what do we have to do that? As well, and I want to let you know too that you will be getting the slides, and I will say, I said earlier, my slides can be kind of bare bones. So if you have any questions about that, my contact information is on the slide. So feel free to either email me or call me. I'll be more than happy to talk to you. All right. So this program is just over a week old. So it was announced last Wednesday by Governor Baker. This is from his press release. And it's basically, the intent of this is to give companies another quiver, another arrow to shoot in order to entice people to come work for them. That's really what this is all about, trying to, it's basically the governor's response to, and he hears from businesses all the time, from what I understand, about can't find talent. No surprise there to anyone on this call. So this is one more something you can use. So why? What's the why behind this grant? So the governor wants, the administration wants companies to widen their aperture when they look at potential applicants. So basically, they want you possibly to consider people that maybe you would not ordinarily consider, or people that you thought, well, maybe they're on the bubble. I don't know if I would hire them or not, because they're missing whatever it is you feel they're missing. So they're trying to say, look, we want to support you in terms of bringing in people. If you can't find the exact right person, right? Well, maybe there's somebody that's close, and with a little support, financial support, you'll bring that person in. So what's the what? What do you have to do here in this grant? And it's really basic. You got a company who's here in Massachusetts, hire somebody who lives in Massachusetts, and you retain them for 60 days. It's really kind of that simple. And that's the details. Okay, so there's going to be details. Every time you get money, you're going to get details. The good news, I think, about these is that these details, as you'll see in a few minutes, are a lot more flexible. If you've ever done any kind of state funding grant of any kind, this is unlike anyone you've ever done in the past. It's frankly a lot easier. You'll see that in a few minutes. So how are you going to do it? Okay, you're going to do it fast. That's my that is, if you take one thing away from this call today, you need to move now. Okay, so that, and I'll show you how to move, but you need to move now because it's running. So what are you going to get on this grant? Well, bottom line is you hire somebody from Massachusetts, you retain them for 60 days, you get $4,000. Employers who can actually end up potentially being able to hire 100 people. So that's $400,000 right there. So that's the kind of the high level look at the funding. What do you got to do? So this verbiage, by the way, is taken right from the website, which we'll point you to in a few minutes. But I want you to pay really careful attention to the wording of this. Always keep this in your mind. Grant recipients are required to use funds in whatever manner is most helpful in training new hires. And just keep that in mind. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. So you're not required to document any training methods. You're not going to have to provide spreadsheets with expenses. This is all very basic. And we'll talk about that, what it is. And really, it's really as basic as a narrative, literally a narrative. Again, a lot different if you've ever done any kind of state funding, training grants or anything, a lot different. So that's what you have to do. Provide some basic documentation in terms of the hiring, payroll, things along that line that's going to allow the state to verify that you in fact have hired an individual and that person has been retained for the full 60 days. So this is my advice. This is why I'm saying quick. Okay, we're going to move quickly because the money is first come, first serve. Okay, it started March 23rd, goes till the end of the year, or until funds are exhausted. And I am betting you funds are going to be exhausted. If we get into the summer with some money left, I'm going to be surprised. And the reason I'm telling you this is because I couldn't get a number as of today. But as of Monday at 1 o'clock, remember this thing was announced like mid-morning the previous Wednesday. As of this Monday at 1 o'clock, there were 1,900 companies already had opened up an account. So there's a lot of interest out there for this funding. So there's a total of $50 million available in this pool. It's American Rescue Act funding, federal dollars. So my point is a lot of eyes are on this. A lot of people are getting involved in this. So if you have an interest at all, you need to move. So there's two super critical deadlines in the administration of this grant. So, when you're doing this and you see them highlighted there, right? You must register your newly hired employees no later than 60 days after the first day of employment with the organization. Then, after that, you must complete the organization registration process and verify that your employee has retained employment for 60 days. And you have to do that no later than 120 days after your staff member has started. So record keeping is key in administering this grant. These are hard and fast timelines. And so just pay attention, use your calendar. Frankly, if you hire somebody and they start on this day, put it on your calendar. So it pops up in your face with an alert that you have to get these deliverables out, because it's all going to be about administration. Now, the big thing is I'm getting money. Okay, I got $4,000. What can I do with the money? What do I have to do with the money, right? That's probably what you're asking. So there's a lot of different things that you can do. For instance, you may have someone who is, you bring someone in who's lacking some experience. You may have a staff member or staff members that are particularly good at a particular job. You could set up a mentorship for your new staff member with one or more staff members. You could call it you could set up a formal, you may have an on-the-job training program that you have for everybody, but you decide, well, look, this person is a little lacking in this particular area. We're going to extend it. So that's part of your onboarding process. You can use the money for that. You may want to hire an external training provider to do some technical kinds of training, right? Again, there could be a certain kind of technique, something that needs to be done that could be unique to your business or unique to the industry, and you need to, this person has all the things you want except this one thing. You can use the money to do that. You could use it for tuition reimbursement benefits, right? You could hire EA&E. You look at EA&E's offerings, and you say, wait a minute, now this person has needs some soft skills or whatever it may be. You could bring in a EA&E to take care of that, the Employers Association. You could use it to incentivize the hiring. So you could look at it two ways. You could use this for a bonus for signing to entice people to sign. And then you could also have a retention bonus, combination signing, retention. You could go straight retention, depending on how you want to do it. And you have the flexibility to set it up in however many days that you want to do this. You don't necessarily, you could set it up, you could set it up, the money, you could divide it 1,000 signing. You could do, maybe $2,000 after a certain period. Again, however you want to work that, this gives you a huge amount of flexibility to take care of this. Key thing, how do I get the money? They're only paying the money out one way, and that is via electronic funds transfer. So depending upon your organization, it would be a great time, if you're going forward with this, now is a great time to get to know your finance person and just confirm that you can accept EFTs. Because you really should, they're not going to send you a check. So you're going to be out of luck if you don't accept EFTs. Generally, that's not a heavy lift these days, frankly, but I always get into trouble when I assume certain things. So there's always a few that don't do things that I think are standard. So just confirm that so you have it. Who's eligible? Well, basically, if you're not a government entity, you are eligible, right? So if you're a for-profit, if you're a nonprofit, you're eligible. You have to have a Massachusetts business location. This is a key point. Now, if you're a company, let's say you're in Enfield, right? And you're based in Enfield and you have an employee, your staff's working remote, and you have Kevin working in Springfield, my home is not a business location. So you won't qualify. And the key thing here is, and some of you will be aware of this and some of you will not, but you must be in good standing with the Commonwealth, which means any money that you owe the state on anything, you are paid up to date. And the way that we prove this is through this magical document called a certificate of good standing. It shows the state, it's the state basically saying you're a good doobie. Now you get it online, and see the website there. I put the actual site there. Just Google Massachusetts Certificate of Good Standing. Now I'll tell you that it's been my experience that most people, many people anyway, are not aware of this certificate of good standing. And many people, usually the people that get into trouble are people walking around the office thinking they are a good citizen, and they are. But something has slipped through the cracks at some future date that no one is even aware of, right? And then you go to file for the certificate, and then it's denied because of whatever the issue is. So that means you have to clear up whatever the issue is. And this may come as a surprise to you, but sometimes government doesn't move fast. So I would say, and I would recommend to you that you start this process immediately. If you don't have one, start it immediately on the off chance that there is something there that's going to trip you up. Because remember, we're moving fast on this grant. So anything that slows you up right now is a very bad thing. So you want to, if you got it, great. If you don't have it, just make sure there's no issues, that you can get it cleared up pretty quickly. Wages. So there's both a wage ceiling and a wage floor here. So for instance, this is the minimum wages that you're looking at right now. So an hourly person, you can't pay any less than $14.25 an hour, right? For a salaried person, must be no less than $21,375. Tip people, you got, if you're working with tip staff, no less than $6.15 an hour. I will say, I do find it kind of odd that the salaried person is $21,375 annually, but when you look at the hourly person, it's $29,640. I'm not sure what the logic is for that, but it's what they laid out. So, but again, be aware of the minimum. And there's also a corresponding maximum. So maximum wages, no more than $42.50 an hour for your hourly, no more than $85,000 for your salaried folks. And again, there is a difference here too. Again, strangely enough, there's a difference. The hourly comes to $88,400. But again, no matter what the employee, they got to be Massachusetts residents. They got to be working in Massachusetts, and the state payroll taxes have got to be coming to the Commonwealth. So that's a key point. So failure on that, you're gonna find yourself in trouble. Okay, you have one shot per individual. So let's say, and by that, what I mean is, okay, so you hire Pam. You saw Pam, you said, Pam will be great on my staff. So you bring Pam in, you enroll her in the program, and then for all of a sudden Pam says, she's been with you like a month, and she says, I miss the Employers Association. I'm going back. And then a week or two later, she comes back onto payroll, says, I really like it here. You try to bring her back, you can't re-enroll her. You got one shot at enrolling an individual into this program. So if they leave, you're out of luck. So only once. And remember, frankly, the window I don't think is going to be very long. Because I'm very skeptical this is going to last, to December. You're not going to have a lot of opportunity for rehiring, I don't think. Possibility of audit. Now, this is kind of boilerplate, and I took this off the website. So if you get the grant, you're subject to an audit. And this is kind of, I always love the phrase clawback of funds. Just so, to me, it's always so descriptive. But they said, they're telling you they can give you money and they can take it away if you fail the audit. So you make a false claim, you could actually end up with criminal prosecution. The good news, well, let me go back here. Possibility of audit too is you gotta provide documentation. These are the documentation, pretty much standard stuff, right? The auditor's Commonwealth Corporation. And a big part of the audit, as I mentioned previously, is going to be the narrative where you're going to describe what you did. So it really would benefit you to keep a good record of what goes on. Sit down, have a meeting, decide on a plan that you can write out that forms the basis, especially if it's an internal kind of thing where you're doing a mentorship. So you have a basis of which, you can say, we did this, and this, and make sure that happens, obviously. But the way business is today, we have a meeting today, and in 2 months, what did we decide upon exactly? Write it down, because it'll make your life easier if in the event you should get an audit. And frankly, I don't think there's going to be a lot of auditing going on. I just don't. So your immediate next steps. So you're going to go to mass.gov/HireNow. I want you to read the guidelines, and I want you to apply. Now, the good news about this is that as soon as you open an account, that's going to open up email communications as things develop. And I very much want to stress to you that this is a developing grant. I mean, I know we're talking to you about this grant, but I need to stress to you that what I'm telling you right now is how the grant is at this very moment. And there is likely to be changes as we go along. But I do want to stress to you, what do you need as you go through this timeline as we move forward? So the first thing I want you, I said, I want you to go and open your account, right? So this is all you basically need. When you open up your account, you need your employer identification number, and you need your Massachusetts location address. Very simple. Go in, set it up. Do it when you get off this call. So then you're going to need to do a verification of your certificate of good standing, present your unique entity identification. I can't get used to saying that. If you do not know what this is, it's relatively new. They're replacing DUNS numbers with these UEIs. So if you do business with the government, you probably have a DUNS. If you have a DUNS number, they've actually automatically converted your DUNS number into a UEI. I don't want to get overly technical here, but that's where that came from. So you're going to have the ability to upload this in late April, just a few weeks. So you'll have to do this. You'll notice on every one of these documentation slides, I have verification requirements still subject to change. So they haven't exactly locked down exactly what they're going to do. So then you're going to have the new hire verification process. So you hired somebody. Now you have to start putting them into the system. So again, late April will be the ability to upload the information. Your details will be shared with you via that information pipeline in mid-April. So you need to really check your emails. Don't let this stuff go to spam, because you could find yourself kind of in a world of hurt potentially. So then the employee retention, so they've hit the 60-day mark, right? So now you need to get this information up in the system to prove they hit the goal. And guess what? Cha-ching, $4,000. So again, this is the process that we have to do. So you're going to have to go back to the website and upload that information. And then finally, at the very end, there's going to be a follow-up report that they're going to be putting together on how was the grant used. And they want to know what was the result of all this. So there's going to be some basic, this is not an audit per se, but this is just some basic information about what happened with the money. So they can sort of roll it up and say, we rolled out $50 million. This is what we got for it. How many people went to work? They want to know, how did the money perform? So this will be coming up. And again, details on this is still being updated, and they're working on it. It's really sort of the back end of the system that they're kind of working on at this point. So some basic resources for you. I'm going to point you to. And so there's the mass.gov/HireNow, which I encourage you to go take a look at the website. And while you're there, you'll click, there's more information. You're going to go to a Commonwealth Corporation version of the website as well. It's very descriptive. It's very text heavy. There's an FAQ section. I would encourage you to at least read the FAQs. The FAQs are there right now, and they are actually in the process of being updated. Now, there's a couple things too that I need to stress to you is that, temp employees don't qualify. You got to have the employees that you're putting into this program have to be W-2 employees, regular, for lack of a better phrase, regular staff employees. So if you got people who are on temp, if they're a contractor, they don't qualify. So it's got to be your regular employees. So at mass.gov, you'll see some really great information. At least read the FAQs. And then you also have the customer service. So you can email for questions, and you also have a phone number that you can call. And again, this will be in the slides when we share them with you. And that is kind of the 50,000-foot view of this program. And I'd be happy to entertain any questions that you may have.
Yeah, so there's a few, Kevin, as we anticipated, right? So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I've been taking a peek at those, and I think some of the things you addressed during the program, but let's go through some of these. So we've got a question. We operate a general contracting business that focuses on high-end carpentry. Our home and business are at a shared address. Does this mean we are automatically disqualified? as an eligible employer.
Is the shared address in Massachusetts?
I believe so.
I would say apply. You know,
Okay.
this is why I tell people for all programs, never rule yourself out.
Right.
Let others rule you out. Okay, so you're in, as long as you're in Massachusetts and meet the basic eligibility, I would recommend for you to apply. From what I've heard, I don't hear anything that would make me think that they would disqualify you.
Oh, and I think you bring up a good point, Kevin. We always have to go back to what is the intent of this, right? So it's really about the Massachusetts employer. It doesn't really matter if you're contributing to the services in Mass.
Yeah.
It's about getting those Massachusetts employers to utilize these funds. So it's always about the intent. I think that's a good point. I'm pulling up the FAQs because I'm sure they're adding to them every day, live time. So we can take a look at that as well.
They were adding to them this
Yeah.
morning, as a matter of fact.
And I did put the FAQ link in the chat for everyone, as well as the main website. So you can kind of draw that up. And then again, they'll be on the slides that Kevin is sharing. And we did get an answer to that question. It appears that eligible employers must have a location of operation in Mass. It can be in an individual's home if the home is an official business operation that's verifiable by public records, right?
Yeah, there you go.
So another question we have is, this is for newly hired staff only and will not work from promotions from within if they were already an employee.
No, this is a program to take people who are unemployed and reattach them to the labor force.
And
That's
my
what this is.
understanding, Kevin, is these employees don't have to work 100% on site, right? If they
Nope.
work a hybrid mix, as long as they're in Massachusetts and you're paying Massachusetts payroll taxes, they're eligible.
Correct.
Okay. And we have a question about, can these funds be used for advertising for the positions?
That one, I don't know. That's a new one. I don't know. I would have to check on that myself.
So I'm
Yeah.
wondering, there's going to be a lot of these nuances, right? There was one question about a referral program and all kinds of different things. So if you put together a program, right, that incorporates part of that money going to the employee, to the new hire, and as a result of several of these other things that we're doing, such as advertising, referral bonuses, those kinds of things, I think just as long as it's not standing alone, then it probably should make sense.
Yeah, and I do think that's part of the qualifier. And again, that's where it's going to be important that when you hire someone, you have a plan, that narrative that Kevin is talking about, right? Well, we used 1,000 for an ad, 1,000 for a sign-on, 1,000 for retention in 6 months, and 1,000 for existing staff to train, right? You're going to have to explain that $4,000 figure.
Yes, and you're really telling a story, right? So you need to think of it in those terms, because the auditor is going to look. Don't just bullet point it necessarily. Tell the story about how that money, how you spent the money, contributed to getting this person up to the skill level that you needed them to be.
And a question has come up, a couple of them, on how long you have to spend the funds, Kevin. So you hire someone, we have that 60-day, that 120-day benchmark for recording purposes, for record keeping. Is there a maximum time frame that we have to spend the funds dedicated to this individual?
As of Monday, there was not.
Okay.
But I would say there's going to be, by this, I'm going to guess, and this, I'm just guessing, I'm surmising, but they're going to want to know what happened to the money. How did they do with the money come the end of the year? So I would say it's likely that there's going to be some kind of requirement put on there that you're going to have that money spent by year's end, just simply to report out.
All right, and we've got an eligibility question. Clinical staff who see clients throughout Massachusetts meet eligibility, and those remote workers that may float into other states and do work in other states for our entity. I think we're checking the other boxes, right? We're checking the wage box, we're checking the physical address box. Let's
And-
meet those criteria, right?
Yeah, and they're Massachusetts residents. So if the worker is a Massachusetts resident working for a Massachusetts company, you satisfied the requirement of the grant.
That's right. Okay. So we've got a question regarding, hey, we've got an orientation, right, that we do like several days when a new employee is being onboarded. Can wages we pay the employee for those days of training be part of this grant?
Well, I would say that if you're talking about your ordinary training, remember the purpose of this money is to take someone who you would ordinarily not hire and give them that requires some kind of remediation.
Right.
So if you have your ordinary training period, there needs to be something extra there. So some either time wise or meat wise, you got to have something that's value added.
Right. And I think, there has to be a plan here. I think that's important to state that there's a lot of ways you can use it, but again, you have to be able to create that narrative for that person.
Mhm.
Dodie's got a question. The website talks a lot about, training and extended on the job training, but I think standard training can be a part of this. So as long as it's training for this individual to advance their participation in your workforce, I think that's fair game for this, Kevin, right?
Yeah, as long as you can make the case that
Yep.
it widened your aperture. The reason you were able, this money enabled you to consider this individual or individuals, you would not ordinarily hire them. So that's a key part of this. That's the motivation. So you have to be able to address that question.
So would
Okay.
that be Kevin, like, certainly didn't have the necessary experience that we normally would consider?
Mhm.
Something like that?
Yeah, it could be an experience. It could be a certain skill.
Mhm. Maybe a different educational background. I'm just trying to think about how are people going to really put this detail in the narrative? How is that going to work?
Well, it could be, well, if it's a technical skill, it's easy, right? So
Right,
that's an
right.
easy skill.
Yeah.
Or maybe it could be a soft skill.
Mm-hmm.
You can think of it that way, where you had an
Yeah.
individual who said, maybe they had the skills, the quote unquote technical, the hard skills that you're looking for, but maybe this individual is lacking in soft skills, right? So we need to bring them in. Gee, we like them, but there was an issue with the fit. It was a soft skill
Sure.
thing.
Mhm.
So we decided to put him or her into this training for soft skills.
Sure. Communications training, emotional intelligence training, that kind of thing, I think would fit the bill here. Can we use it for a referral bonus to a current employee who referred the candidate to us?
That one I'd have to look into. I don't know. I off the top, that seems to be kind of counter to the spirit of it, but
Well, I was thinking, if it was part of that program, to Allison's point earlier, if it really was kind of that the new employee also gets
Mhm.
some kind of incentive, right? And
Yep.
you tie it together, maybe even with some shadowing, some mentoring, some training. Typically, we refer people, right, that, we know can do what we do. So maybe it's, again, I think it's going to be in that narrative, really providing that reasoning.
So yeah, maybe just that straight, hey, Pam referred Kevin to the organization, but isn't having anything to do with his training or professional development, might be a little in a gray area, but saying to Kevin, hey, in addition to your duties, when we're onboarding Pam into the organization, we need you to mentor her, grow her, spend time on the job training her. That would go towards that. If you want to give a stipend or a bonus, that's going to be a good narrative, right? That we can say fits the criteria here.
Yeah. It's how you wrap it.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a question about using some of these funds as a salary negotiation, which I think probably fits into this, where if somebody comes back and says, hey, I'm not going to take 50,000, I'm really looking for 52. And can you use that money to round off that? Sure, that's a sign-on bonus,
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
just remember, if you add it to their salary, you own it going forward, right, everybody? So that's an every year thing. If you up their salary, if you use it for a sign-on bonus, that gives you some more flexibility.
And I would also
So-
say too that, I would also add to that too, is just, you know, you do have to keep in mind pay equity as you go forward with this, depending upon what you do. And I'm not going to say I'm not an expert on pay equity, but it's something we all need to consider, you know, in our organization. So you don't want to get yourself in trouble potentially.
It's true.
Yeah, somebody has posted in the chat that they are behind issuing the certificate of good standing. So that's why Kevin has recommended that you kind of get your organization registered and request that. So certificate of good standings are also required if you're participating in the Express Fund program, the Mass Workforce Training Fund grant programs, and the Express program, since they changed, have seen what we understand a 25 to 30% increase in utilization, right? So you can see why ComCore isn't getting 100 more staff people to manage this on top of everything. So there's going to be some backlog sometimes with the certificates and things like that. So thank you for that share in the chat. Somebody's asked the question, do commissions count towards the salary that we have to start with benchmarking? Any idea on that, Kevin?
Have not heard that issue raised.
I think in the absence of them talking about it, sometimes we just have to lean on our federal and state law, right? So we look at wage and hour law and we think about commissions, that's part of salary, you know? I don't know that they'll go that route, but a lot of times when there's an absence of really talking about what the specific details are around it, we kind of lean on our laws.
And what I'm doing, by the way, I'm noting these questions. I'm going to run it up the flagpole and I'll share the answers with Allison and Pam so that they can get back to you on these answers with these questions.
Excellent. Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah, and I'm zipping through the chat here, and you know, I think we just have to reiterate, you need to be a Mass-based employee. It doesn't matter if you're in another state and have employees here, that does not qualify you, right? So this is a case where you're going to want to run through the checklist on the HireNow website and look at some of those FAQs. So there's a question about how to set up the EFT. When you go in the portal, they're going to ask you that information, right, Kevin?
Yes, they're going to set up, they're going to set up a specific secure transfer mechanism. Their words, not mine. I'm not a finance person. I have no idea how that really works. I do know it's going to be secure and it's going to be specific to the program. And that information will come to you once you signed up, at some point after you signed up and created your account.
So there's a couple questions about per diem staff that convert to full-time and temps that might be on attempt to hire that convert to full-time. So they would be eligible after March 23rd if they are full-time, 30 hours at least.
Right.
Yes, have to be W-2 employees.
W-2 employees, right.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yep. Okay.
So this is interesting. Oh, go ahead, Allison.
No, go ahead, Pam.
Carrie just posted something about having your headquarters in another state and you could qualify. I think just as long as you have to have presence here at Mass.
Yes. Yes, you
right?
have
But
to
you
have
a headquarters, you have a parent company in
yeah.
California, but you've got to be registered here in Mass.
Right. Doesn't matter where your headquarters is, as long as you have a presence here within the Commonwealth.
So there's a question about, you know, we have summer months coming, and if the money lasts, if we're hiring seasonal workers that are working for us at least 30 hours, would they qualify for this program?
They're hiring, you know, if they meet the qualifications, they're W-2 employees. They're going to hit the 60-day benchmark. Yes, they'll qualify.
Yep, and you know, and there's questions about interns that are brought on paid as a W-2, working 30 hours a week, meeting the 60-day requirements, right? That they would qualify as well.
Correct.
I think we can feel comfortable that it doesn't matter what classification they are, just that they, you know, check off 30 hours, the 60 days, and that they work for the employer, right?
As you know, as I said at the beginning, at the top, this is unlike anything you have dealt with before. It's almost so simple, it's like mind-boggling.
it's simple, but I think where we're getting a little tripped up, and rightly so, is that narrative. So it's really making the employer think about how are you going to use the money? And I think that's the important piece here, that we can be creative, you know, about how we use it, and that we really put together that plan and be pragmatic about how do we think we're going to do it? What kind of technical training, what kind of soft skills, what do the mentorship and apprenticeship programs look like? Putting together the program is the key.
Yeah. Yeah,
We
having a
have some-
plan, working your plan.
And we have a question about, you know, somebody part-time, maybe they're a student part-time until they finish school. They've got to meet that 30-hour threshold in order for you to put them into consideration for this.
Right.
Period, right? They're a W-2 working 30 hours. There's that sandwich salary threshold, right? Where they have to be above a level, below a level. As long as they meet that criteria, you know, they may not be eligible, frankly, if they're until they're out of school and they have those full-time hours slated, right?
Yeah.
Or the close to full-time hours.
Just keep in mind, these are all new employees too. I can't stress
Right.
that enough. And that your existing staff not eligible.
Yep. And there's a question about, you know, making sure we get the money, right? So we're putting new hires into the portal. My understanding is too, once we put them in, we may get prompted by the portal in 60 days to say, hey, Kevin, is Pam still on your payroll, right? So yes, we're verifying that Pam's still on our payroll. So you don't have to pay out that money right away. However, that electronic funds transfer will come to you at that point, but you can still designate the payout of the money at a timing of your choice.
And I think we're suggesting that you do so, right? That you don't just use that 60-day mark as your program plan. You have flexibility. You can be creative here.
Also a key point too, they will not accept third-party administrators. So it's really on you to take care of all the mechanisms needed to deliver the payment.
And Claudia brings up a great question about they don't have to be unemployed currently or underemployed, right? So sometimes the state has put out programs where that is a requirement. That is not the case here.
Nope.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
All right, I'm zipping through here. Let's see. If somebody worked for you in the past, but is coming back on board now, that's still okay, right? As long as they're newly hired after March 23rd.
Yep. Correct.
So here's one that I think we may not know the answer to. And I love the creativity here, everybody, right? I can see I can smell the burning, everyone, even though we're on a webinar. What about a team building event that includes the new employee that would benefit a team or a group that may not meet the muster?
I can't say for sure. I would, from the sound of it, I doubt it, but you know, I would call ComCore on that one, actually, to say, this is what we're thinking. You know, let them, I would say, you know, call them or email them and let them rule it out.
Right.
And be thinking about what that new hire is getting out of it, including that in your description, in your narrative.
I mean, you could make the argument, yeah, the team build, the thing that the new people or person is lacking is the team building, is being part of the team.
Especially if it's a relationship building rapport type position where you need rapport.
Because oftentimes it's not what you say, it's how you say it.
Right.
All right. I think, you know, Joan makes a really good point here about, you know, what's to stop employees from jumping from one employer to another to try to take advantage of this. And I think here's where, you know, as we were talking about it yesterday, Pam, Kevin, and I, you're going to want to be strategic in how you set this up, right? So we're not throwing $4,000 at somebody, a new hire in 60 days. That is not a good use of this money. So we have to be very strategic in how we approach this.
Also, too, you may opt not to give the employee any money.
Right.
You may say I'm using the $4,000 for training. I may bringing in a vendor, right? Yeah, you may be
Excellent
sending
point.
them, you may be
Excellent
sending them off-site for training. So, you're not locked into necessarily using the money to give it to the employee. You could be using it for ensuring their development into a productive employee for you.
I think you bring up a good point, Kevin. You could probably use that verbiage in your advertising, that we're investing in training. And so that's a real kind of a hook sometimes for some of these people that, don't want to go into a position they aren't going to feel set up for success.
So Kevin, there's some questions that coming in that I think are good. And I think they're process kind of questions we got to walk through here, where we're putting people into the portal when we hire them. And we're saying to the candidate, hey, if you stay with us for 60, 120, and 6 months, we're going to give you $500 retention bonuses through these increments. And then the money doesn't come through from the state for some reason. It's my understanding that once you enter the information into the portal, that they are kind of setting aside those funds for you. So as long as you're going to get those funds, as long as they're for those valid uses. Am I right in that assumption?
Yeah, they're gonna. Yeah, I think once you enter the employee in, it becomes like a placeholder, right? So they can't.
Right.
You can't just in terms of administrating any grant. You can't have people registering and you have $120 million worth of outstanding obligations, and you have $50 million in cash in this case.
Right.
So they're going to be monitoring. They're going to be looking at the portal and saying, okay, we have potential obligations of X, and once they get to that 50 million, the portal's going to close.
Right. So once you submit, I think you're reasonably assured of getting that money, provided that you're using it for the right purposes, right? You can't use it to build a new break room for your company. That's going to probably be a red flag.
Sure.
And Carrie, thank you. Just called and verified that you can have your headquarters in another state. As long as you have a Massachusetts presence, you will still qualify. So I know we've got folks from Fitchburg that are asking about, confirming that you were going to receive the funds. So, I think what we're talking about here is when you enter that information that you've got a new employee, those funds are getting earmarked to your organization. So you can pretty much reasonably assume that you're going to get that money, is my understanding. And I think yours too, Kevin.
Yeah. Because if they didn't do it that way, anarchy would ensue fairly quickly.
Right. Yeah. So somebody has to be on for at least that 60-day window, right? So if the way you allocate your money is, hey, somebody's got to be on board an additional 120 6 months before they get the rest of the funds, and they leave before that happens, I'm not sure there's anything that would need to be done in that case. What do you think about that scenario, Kevin?
Yeah, because the money would be de-obligated. You'd come off. They're going to need to prove it's going to be the payroll information that you're going to have to provide. So you're not going to be able to provide that payroll information. So that'll de-obligate that money. In essence, it'll be returned back into the pool.
Okay. So, and I do think, I think there's a sort of a lack of believability here sometimes from us as employers, because we feel like, what's the catch, right? And I've got somebody in the chat, right, saying, what's the catch here? Can you talk about that a little, Kevin? Because I think, you're very familiar with the programs that come out of the state. Talk a little bit about your thoughts on that.
Well, it's like, I will say, when I first heard this, about this, you're right. It's too simple. I mean, it's like, I'm the same way. There's always, when I hear we're the government, we're here to help, I get a little nervous. And what is the catch? And I haven't been, and I'm always I'm the guy who's looking for the catch, because I am, and I can't find it in this case. It's really designed. This is one of the few times that I can say they really designed this in terms of getting the money out quickly, easily, with a real minimum amount of hassle. They're really asking for really basic things. And again, I said this earlier, if you've ever had a state grant of any kind, it's unbelievable. Some of the stuff sometimes you have to provide before, during, and after. And this is really simple. And I think the simplicity is being recognized, is reflective in the fact that as of Monday, we had, over 1,900 companies already in line. So I really don't think there's a catch. It's just really being intentional about what you do, document, having a plan up front, documenting it, and so that when it comes time to submit, everything's right there. It makes sense. It tells a good story. You'll have nothing to worry about.
And it's okay to believe this, right? I think the number, and Kevin, you may know this and correct me if I'm wrong, but Massachusetts received $4.5 billion in ARPA money. And, we know that 500 million has been earmarked for unemployment relief. We've got a bunch of workforce development programs. There's money coming to the workforce, training centers, the MassHires like Kevin's group. So this is 50 million for this program. So you can believe it. It's real.
Yeah. And I don't think, $4,000, you're not going to go out and hire someone that you don't need for $4,000, right? So in my mind, these are hires that are going to happen anyway, right? You have the openings. You have positions you need to fill. So you're just saying, I'm just casting a wider net essentially here. So why not, go out, get the additional money to help support your hiring efforts and your training efforts.
Right. And I think there's a question on apprenticeships. I think apprenticeships probably are a great use of these funds. That's a great way to get training and development up and running for a new hire. Yes,
absolutely. Great support. Frankly, it would make a great story in the narrative that you're combining these two things that are really supported by the workforce development system here in the Commonwealth. That would be you would not have a thing to worry about if you were on the odd chance you were audited.
Kevin, there was one question that came up. I was just curious. I think I did read something somewhere that there are some employer exceptions about who can receive this, or is it every single employer?
Exceptions?
Yeah, I thought I had heard somewhere that there may be some types of employers, maybe municipalities that aren't available.
Yeah, government agent, anything to do with the government.
Yeah.
And I will say that initially there was a hard and fast no to temp agencies.
Right.
Employment agencies, there was a hard and fast no.
Yeah.
And 2 days later that had softened to let us investigate.
Yeah.
So I think, this is very much being designed in some ways as we go.
Yeah.
Because I think they want to get the money out relatively quickly. And so I think they're open to new ideas, questions, and possibly, kind of shifting things around if they come across something that has them say, we hadn't thought about that. They think about it, and if it accomplishes the goal, I think they're open to it.
How do you think we'll get updates? Do you think it'll just be through the website? Do you think there'll be other, like adding to the FAQs?
Yeah, the FAQs are going to be, I think they're going to hit those hard and heavy. Since last Wednesday, they've already hit them hard and heavy. And they were, like I said, they're doing it again this morning. So you'll have a combination of the FAQs, and definitely once you're on, because they've stressed this multiple times, that once you apply, there's going to be a lot of information being pushed down through that pipeline.
Sure.
There's a question on whether or not the funds can be used to help pay for a license that's required for a new position.
So you have someone who has, so I would say, because you're considering someone, you would hire someone if they had the license.
Right. I think it's similar with tools. We've got a question out there. It came up a couple times about tools.
Right.
If it's central to the role, I think it's probably going to qualify with it.
Well, I would think it would. Because if the job requires a certain set of tools, you got someone you think is going to be great, but they don't have the tools.
Right.
I would just say, make sure, do you ordinarily pay for those tools? just keep that in mind. You don't want to try to stop something you ordinarily do. So you're using that you have to be a little careful about.
Sure.
So there's a question about, can cannabis companies take advantage of this because it's a state-run program? And I think the states are always fine with cannabis. It's the feds, even though it's federal money. So I'm not sure we know the answer to that one. You might, Kevin.
I don't, that wasn't actually brought up, but that was not, I would think that, frankly, if that was a situation, I think that would have been pretty well brought up.
Right.
Like right off the bat, but I will follow up on cannabis.
All right, let's see. So still questions on the process. I think we've addressed a lot of that in terms of when folks are eligible, when you should open up your employer portal, get your certificate of good standing, that's 60-day, 120-day windows, equipment and tools we addressed. I'm just scanning here. I think we hit the highlights, and we're coming up to 12:26. So let me just check Q&A. So there are some questions, Kevin, and maybe we can just review this quickly. We're opening up our portal for our employers, and we're notifying that we've signed on a new employee. We've hired a new employee. When are we letting the state know that we hired a new employee versus the 60 days of retention? Do we need to be in touch with the state during both of those timeframes?
So you're going to, well, they're going to open up the portal mid-April. So for you to start using retention, the hiring now.
Yep.
So it appears, and let me preface this by telling you, they're literally still designing this right now. So, I'm going to tell you something, but I'm going to say I'm standing on Jello, just so you know. So they're working on this. So you'll put these people in, and it's looking right now. They're going to start that process as of now in late April, with details to be shared in mid-April.
Right. So if it starts March 23rd and you hire someone, on March 24th, you probably want to make sure that you at least got the reminder in your calendar, like you said earlier, that it's 60 days.
Yeah.
That's when you want to make sure that you've notified them.
Yeah, because that's the new hire verification process.
Right.
Then the other side of that, the 120 days, it's the employee retention verification.
Right.
That they're going to have details out to folks in mid-April, but that process won't be available for upload until late May.
Which makes sense with the timeline.
All right, I think we've come through most of the questions. That was a total whirlwind. You guys were wonderful listeners and asked a lot of great questions, so we appreciate that. I know we don't have all of the answers right now, but we wanted to make sure we brought you the information that we did know. So we want to thank Kevin for his expertise and his guidance and his leadership on this topic, without a doubt. And if you're not using MassHire's resources and you're not from Springfield, certainly if you're in Springfield area, you want to be calling Kevin and his team because they're awesome. But Kevin, tell us about MassHire across the state. How many of there are you? There's a lot more.
There's like 30 of us. We're from Boston to Pittsfield to Greenfield to the Cape. So they just go on mass.gov/career centers, or just go mass.gov, search career centers. You get a great list. Select the career center nearest you. And I highly encourage you to start a relationship, in particular with their business services staff, who can help you out on various recruitments or other issues that you may have.
Yeah, because this talent shortage isn't going anywhere for a while. So a relationship with your MassHire business services rep is a definite must. So please look into your regional MassHire location and develop a strong partnership with them moving forward. And the team here at EA&E, we're monitoring this. We've got a direct line to Kevin. We'll be working with him and getting information from the state, getting updates out to you. Keep your eye on those FAQs. And Pam and the HR team here at EA&E are here for you, right, Pam?
Absolutely. We're happy to help. Call with any questions. We will figure out the answers. That's what we do.